Hello everyone, Jeff from RespawnStudios.com back with part 2 of my episode 2 walkthrough of Alan Wake. So this will take us to the end of the episode. There are not as many collectibles in the second half, I guess, as the first half, but there's still a decent amount because there are so many in the game. We're also going to have the driving tutorial and the first driving section where you can pick up the achievement to kill 10 enemies with a car. Alright, so we left off last time right here at the little tram. Let's go across this gap. And this is going to lead us into an encounter with a character that we actually first met on the ferry. I said to keep that guy in mind, and this is where Alan realizes it's that guy from the back of the ferry, and he also puts 2 and 2 together that this has to be the kidnapper, because why would he know his name? He already knew Alice, so then we have to deal with him. So that is where we are going to pick up. Alright, and we are now also introduced to hand flares. Before we had the flare gun in the tutorial. We're also going to have the flare gun again in a bit. But this is where we learn about hand flares, because we're not going to have any gun for a while because we just crashed, so we lost everything. And the guy from the ferry, Mott, here is using a hand flare, and then that takes down their darkness shield much faster, and then he shoots them.
That flashlight's kid stuff.
And we're going to find out his ransom terms for having your wife. You're asking him for the gun, but he refuses to give it to you. He says just use the flashlight to take down their shield and use these flares.
Because that's the way the story goes.
And now this is where Alan starts talking to himself, or talking to you, remembering that he was on the ferry, that how did he know your name? He saw Alice. He's leading you toward Lover's Peak. This has to be the kidnapper.
We were headed in the direction of Lover's Peak. There was no way this was a coincidence. He was the kidnapper.
Alright, so right about here is where you're first attacked. There are 2 enemies in front, and I think at least 1 to 2 behind you when they initially spawn. But obviously they could then circle wherever. So yeah, it looks like 2 in front, 2 behind. I just run forward a bit because this open area, it's a little bit easier to deal with them. And there's also more hand flares over here. Not that I really need them, but I'm just stocking up now. I already had 6, which is more than good enough to deal with 4 guys. Alright, so once you take out that first, I guess, wave, he starts to unlock the door, but it's taking him forever. So you have to defend him, and since you don't have a gun, he still refuses to give it to you. You just have to keep them back by either using the flashlight or using the hand flares. And you should have plenty of both, but the hand flares are easier because it makes all the enemies back up. You don't have to worry about pointing the flashlight individually at each of them. And even on Nightmare difficulty, it should only take like 3 to 4 flares. You just really wait for it to burn down and then use another one. At one point here, I wait a little too long and an enemy hits me from the side. If you're doing this on Nightmare, you probably would have died to that. So you might want to drop another flare down just to be safe as the other one starts to go down or has already been out for a few seconds. Maybe just put another one down while the first one's still going to be safe. Alright, now our first collectible of this part. Before you venture out onto the Lover's Peak, I guess, dock or landing, lookout point, come behind this sign. And there is a coffee thermos on that rock. You could also see a manuscript page down there, which I never knew you could see. That's from the next section. You also cannot, for some reason, fit through that gap, even though it's big enough, so you have to go back around. Alright, and now we have another sequence where we have to defend the kidnapper. Initially there's going to be 3 enemies attacking you from the end of the lookout point, 2 regular guys and 1 larger enemy. And then I believe 3 or 4 enemies climb on different parts of the lookout point and come up from below. And then there's going to be 2 sets of drops from up above, and there's like 1 or 2 random enemies that climb during those. And then 1 more big enemy and 1 more weaker enemy that come from the end. So there is a decent number of enemies, I think like 12 to 14 total. But you should have plenty of flares and flashlight. It doesn't matter how often the other guy gets hit, so just worry about yourself. He kind of randomly changes targets, and it doesn't even so much depend on who you're looking at currently. So sometimes there still might be enemies alive by you that he's not looking at that might be able to get hits in on you, so be careful. But all in all, this is not a difficult section. Just take your time, you should have plenty of supplies, just play it smart. Alright, and that was it. So now we go to a cutscene where he is demanding that you bring him the full manuscript. Your wife's not here. He's not going to give you your wife until you have a full manuscript. So you punch him in the face, which breaks the boards behind him and he's falling. And I guess the momentum of your punch also brings you off the side. And there we go. Alright, so now Mott escapes, but we now have his gun, so we have a gun back. And now we have to work our way back to Barry and think of how we could make up a manuscript to potentially give to him, to deliver to him. So there's a bunch of random supplies. I guess they fell from Mott or you as you were falling. But before you go forward, turn around and you have to drop down a few rocks. And in this little cave over here is our next chest of supplies. And then you have to climb your way back up. And then we'll be picking up that manuscript page that we saw from above before we have to cross some fallen trees, which conveniently span both parts of this gap. And there's the manuscript page. I'm not quite sure how I missed it, but having played this full chapter, I know I missed a little area. It's before the first bear trap coming up. It's, I think, just off the path. Like, it's part of the path, but it's where you would turn on the path. But if you just look to the left, there's a barrel. And I think it has both a can pyramid on it, and then there's also a coffee thermos just behind the log on the ground right before, like, where you'd fall off a cliff. But for some reason, I did not run into that area here. Maybe I skipped part of the path or something. I'm not really sure how I missed it. But anyway, you just have to keep making your way through pretty similar looking sections of the forest, so it gets a little confusing at times. But as long as you follow like the worn down path, it should be fairly straightforward. You're going to have to cross a couple more logs that lead upward before you drop down later. And just to point out, it's what Alan says, the flashlight reflects off the bear trap, so you can see them pretty obviously on the path. But But that first one just lets you know, okay, there's bear traps. Look out for them now. I like that Alan is instantly able to run like he didn't just have a bear trap almost cut off his leg. He's not even affected by it. He's wearing a shin guard or something. And some random groups of enemies, about 3 or so, will spawn every now and then, but you could really just run past them. Especially in an area like this, if you run past them and hit this walkway, they can't come up here. They could potentially throw like a hatchet at you, but that won't kill you or really knock you off. So if you reach the log, you'll be fine. Just a little note here, when you start to turn that big guy always starts to walk out, but that's just to scare you. You have plenty of time to finish the turns to make the checkpoint. But once you leave the light of the checkpoint, that guy and the little guy that threw the hatchet both do spawn if you're out in the dark eventually for more than, say, a few seconds, so kind of be careful. In that first hut where that big guy had come out of, I walked in there because that's where a coffee thermos is. And right in front of this other one is a manuscript page, and there is a hunting rifle inside. So be sure to pick all of those up. And there's the guy, but I dropped down, so it's okay. Now we get a focus point. This is something I missed in my first playthrough, but having played the game so many times, I've now done it a few times. The plane over here. If you stay over here eventually, and this is all I'm going to show you, the one wing of the plane collapses. And that makes it so you can walk, jump on a rock and then climb across that, and you are out on a ledge. And if you follow the ledge for a couple steps, it'll lead you to another chest of supplies. So if you're going for all the collectibles or you just want some more supplies, be sure to do that. And the hunting rifle is the best regular gun in the game, by far, to me. Obviously the flare gun is the most powerful, but in terms of standard guns, the hunting rifle is awesome. It kills it kills any sort of regular enemy, the weak ones or the strong ones, in one hit. And even a mini boss like the chainsaw guy we have coming up, it will kill in 2 hits. I kind of previewed that before, talking about my favorite manuscript page. And then he heard the chainsaw. Okay, this is going to be another coffee thermos. This is way off the path. You'll see back there's a little rocky point. It's not on that one, it's on this second one. And then as you move forward, there's going to be a couple enemies that spawn around this campfire kind of area. Actually 3 for me. So I decided to just run past them, and it actually nearly gets me killed even on normal, so you might want to take them out. But there's a checkpoint right here, and anytime you enter a checkpoint, if I haven't already mentioned it, if you haven't realized it on your own, which you probably did, when you enter a checkpoint, the light area, all the enemies like disappear. And they don't disappear for good. The second you leave, they'll probably respawn like within 20 feet of you. But as long as you're standing in the light, you're totally fine. And now we, for the first time, encounter some like pure darkness, I guess, on the ground. The little patches of like oil or darkness that hurts you if you walk into it. You can put them out, but it's kind of annoying, so just try and avoid them as you're walking. On the second floor, side room, if you come out on this little balcony, there is a manuscript page. And now, as we make our way up to the 3rd floor, we're going to have to kick down the weight to bring up the... I don't even know what to call it. Elevator, I guess. You're going to have to jump this gap. And then if you just keep walking, the momentum will mean you just come up over here, pick up that other manuscript page, and there's going to be a coffee thermos back there on the right, on that barrel. There's also a flare here. Alright, and now we have made it out of the mill. No enemies or anything. It's just the first time that the darkness is on the ground. Alright, now there's going to be an enemy. And it's one of the stronger standard enemy types. So try and keep your distance. Their swings are pretty powerful. Just keep backing up as you're shining the light. And then there I use the hunting rifle to kill him in one shot. There's a few boxes you could jump on top of to get back there where that manuscript page is. I just decided not to do it. I'm just going to show you it's right there. And then to move forward, since the gate is boarded up, you just come up this slanted board. Once you jump correctly. There's some more supplies right here. Alright, now 2 enemies are going to attack you after they try and sabotage you by pushing some logs and some bundles right there, a barrel. And they're both stronger enemy types, so it could be a difficult battle, especially on Nightmare. I generally try and run past these guys and then turn around once I'm at the top of the hill. But you should always try and take them out. And they're the only 2 enemies there, so you kind of have time on your side. There's no real threat of little guys running around or anything. Alright, up here is a flare on the bench and a couple more supplies in here. And now we have the chainsaw guy. He's going to take, as I said a little earlier, 2 hunting rifle shots. And he also obviously has a lot of darkness shield. So you should probably use some hand flares just to be safe so he doesn't get right up next to you. There's also 2 to 3 regular enemies that run around, but generally they don't come in this area that much. It's mostly just this chainsaw guy. So just the combination of the flares and shining a flashlight on him should take down the shield fairly quickly. And then you just shoot him twice with the hunting rifle. There's no achievement for that guy, but it just feels good to take out a mini-boss without taking damage. Alright, and now we are approaching the first driving section.
Barry?
We also get a call from Barry saying there's tons of birds outside the house. Please get back here. He says you'll be there as soon as you can. Now, coming up on the right on a picnic table is a coffee thermos, and it's kind of easy to miss because there you see I ran past, and that's what I did my first 6 playthroughs. I think it was like the 98th or 99th coffee thermos I got. So be sure to pick that one up. Alright, now we have to come over here to the bathroom building. There is a manuscript page here by the door to the women's bathroom, but there's nothing else in there, so come over here to the men's bathroom. There's a key to get to the truck, and also this TV turns on. I believe that does count as one of the TVs, but I'm not 100% sure, because there are a few TVs that turn on throughout the game, and I think most of them count, but there are 1 or 2 that are story related, more so than others, and I think they do not count. Alright, so now we use that key we just picked up, and we can get in this park ranger truck. Now you have to do these 3 things: accelerate, steering, and reversing. That's why I'm driving like a crazy person right there. You just have to do them before you can move on. Before you go down the road the other way, which is forward, come over here to the right, and there's going to be a coffee thermos by where the road is blocked off, where that truck is overturned. Alright, there is an achievement to kill 10 enemies while driving a vehicle. You're going to drive a vehicle a few different times throughout the game when there are enemies, so if you don't get all 10 now, it's not an issue at all. But it is fairly easy to get 10 now. You just take your time. And again, you could hold down A to more intently focus the beams on enemies, which will then get down their shield, and then you just ram them with the car. Now over here on the right side of the road, you'll probably have noticed that yellow arrow. And that means there is another chest. It's in that little hut. Alright, hit another enemy. Alright, so on this other side of the road, so don't just go forward if you're going for all the collectibles and everything. Over here on the left side of the road, really set back, is a little checkpoint area with 2 picnic tables. There's going to be a hunting rifle, which if you already have it, just gives you more ammo, which is always nice. But there's also a can pyramid on one of the 2 picnic tables normally. So be sure to get that if you're going for the Carney achievement or just trying to get everything. I think that's the 3rd one that I pointed out. There was the one in the tutorial, and then the one right after we made that log bridge in chapter 1, or episode 1. So you should have at least 3. Alright, now we are moving forward. We've come across this bridge. There's going to be a manuscript page down that tunnel. The tunnel's blocked off about 20 yards down, but where it's blocked off, there's a manuscript page in the ground, so be sure to pick that up. Right there on the left, on that picnic table, is a coffee thermos, so also be sure to get that. Here I'm just going past the enemies. You don't have to fight all of them, but if you're going for the achievements to get certain kills with the hunting rifle or the pistol, maybe you'd like to. And there's also an achievement to use 100... I'm not sure if it's 100 or 200 batteries. So anytime you're using the flashlight, you could then hit Y to reload a battery. And you just had to have done that either the 100 or 200 times. And I think in my stats I was like over 2,000. So if you don't get it on your first playthrough, you'll definitely get it on a second. Or when you're doing the 2 DLCs. So it's not really anything you have to go out of your way to do. The reason I was zooming in on different areas of the flashlight, that was the area where we had come down initially from the cabin at the start of the entire episode. So if you hadn't picked up the manuscript page on the stoop or the 2 coffee thermoses, the one behind the building or the one in the smaller building, you could get those right then. And now as we're making our way back up, we're going to be attacked by the standard Taken one more time. I believe you can just run forward and a checkpoint light appears and you could just run into that and be fine. Oh yeah, there's a light right up here. There we go. And then once you're through that, you get a phone call from the kidnapper telling you the specifics of where to bring the full manuscript, when and where. Tells you to bring it to the coal mine museum at I don't remember if it's noon or midnight of the next day. I think he gives you 2 days because you're trying to explain to him you haven't finished the full manuscript, so you're making up an excuse so you could try and make a manuscript. So you say, all right, give me a week, I need a week. All right, 2 days. Alright, now we are almost back to Barry, and we're going to see all of the freaking darkness birds that are hovering above. Also by that checkpoint before, a little bit before it on a case was a flare gun, but if you hadn't picked one up, I think there's a flare gun also right there, and some more flares and flare gun ammo. There's a ton of flares and flare gun ammo in this area, which is awesome. So feel free to use it all liberally. This is the very end of the episode, so use as much of it as often as you want. You just have to take out, I think it's around 10 to 12 full swarms of birds. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but that seems to always be what it is. So you could shoot them with the flare gun, you could just use your flashlight. As they're dive bombing on you, you could use a flare, so they have to go into it, and it should kill most of them off. So there's a few different strategies that could all be effective. But come back to the back of the cabin, and this was not here when you start the episode. But now, as you've come back, there is a hidden chest back here, and it has 2 more flare gun shots, which is nice. You're probably not going to need all of the flare gun shots if you've picked up all the ammo, but especially on, say, Nightmare, it's always useful. And just go by sound and also keep spinning around. You could generally see them a good distance before they get to you, so you could plan. Or you can use a flare, shoot them with a flare gun, just use a flashlight. Alright, and this is going to wrap it up for episode 2, this battle sequence, before we get to some cutscenes. And the biggest thing to take away from the cutscenes coming up is Rose and who is with Rose in her trailer. Alright, so I'm going to stop my commentary here and let the game volume take over so you could enjoy these last couple cutscenes. I should be back with, I think episode 3 will be another 2-parter, so at least part 1 of that soon. Alright, see ya.
To ask around about a man fitting the kidnapper's description. He'd go through the archives of the local paper. Perhaps he could learn something. Anything about the island and the cabin that had disappeared. The man wanted a manuscript. I had to try to write him one to get Alice back. For me, the supernatural had always been nothing but a metaphor for the human psyche, a tool to use in writing fiction. Now, it was happening for real, and I couldn't put a single word on paper.
Barry Wheeler speaking.
This is Rose.
Rose?
I found Mr. Wake's pages.
Oh, you sweet, brilliant girl.
Could you and Mr. Wake come get them? I live in the trailer park outside the town.
We'll be there in less than an hour.
Bye now.
See you soon.
Have a great day. Hope you come back soon. Welcome to the
Oh Dear Diner.
Good girl.
Come here. Pretty please, can you